The first thing that came to mind was show of hands. How many people were terrified the first time they had to present to this front horseshoe? Every hand, including the CEOs, went up.
Here's an uncomfortable question. When you introduce yourself as a speaker, are you actually thinking about your audience or are you thinking about your business? Most speakers pitch the way that their business thinks, services, credentials, what they've done. But the person on the other end of that pitch, whether it's a booker or an audience member or someone deciding whether to hit reply, is thinking like a human. That mismatch is why so many pitches, elevator introductions, and I help statements on LinkedIn disappear the moment they're heard. Today, I'm joined by a returning guest, Mike Verrett, a former Hasbro Toys communications director turned pitch coach. He spent his career translating business thinking into human language. We get into elevator pitches, AI written bios, and why order matters more than content. Welcome to Professional Speaking, the show for people who are serious about speaking and becoming known, booked, and paid. My name's John Ball, professional speaking coach, keynote speaker, stand-up comedian, and sci-fi nerd. I'm here as your guide on the journey to a successful speaking career. I'm very happy to welcome back to my show a special guest who we haven't, I think, been maybe 4 years or so since we last spoke on the show.
2021.
2021. Gosh, it was a while back. Welcome to the Professional Speaking Show, Mike Verrett.
Thank you very much for having me, John. It's great to see you again.
Well, thanks, Mike. Definitely glad to have you back because I think the topic that you are an expert in is one that probably uncover as much as we could or should on this show, and certainly a valuable one for people who are in the professional speaking world, which is that of pitching. And I think most of us have probably a bit of even fear about that. Like, how are you supposed to do it? And if you watch those TV shows where people are pitching their businesses to dragons or sharks or whatever they are, then you know that most people aren't actually that good at this. So tell us a little bit about what your expertise is with pitching and maybe even how you came to be an expert in this area.
Well, the first fundamental principle of why pitching is so hard is it's your business and you're thinking like a business, and everything about your business is important to you. Not to mention the fact that you're about to be in a public speaking situation that people rank over death and being struck by lightning in terms of things they're afraid of. So you've got a lot of forces working there. And the truth is, the audience of whatever you're going to say thinks like a human being. For instance, right now, you're processing information as a human, and then you would translate it to business. So when we're in our business role, we don't have a choice. We think differently. We act differently. We talk differently. Like if you and I got together for a cup of coffee and I said, so John, what are your KPIs this weekend? I'd sound like a lunatic. I'd say, what are you doing this weekend? And business has a way of warping things. So when it comes to pitching it, you can't see the outside world. It's very insular because everything's important to you. And it's the exact reason that an author like Stephen King gets his book to where it's ready to be published, but gives it to someone else to read to write the blurb. Every word in the book is chosen with specificity. Every word is important to him. It would take him 5 hours and 15 paragraphs to put the blurb together. But if I read it, I could write the blurb in 10 minutes. 3 hot paragraphs that sell the book. That's his practice because he knows he's stuck in that 100% knowledge, and his audience only needs to know 5% of that. So that's why he does it. My background, I was in the advertising agency world, or, marketing, promotions, different kind of firms for 14 years. My last assignment was at Hasbro Toys here in Rhode Island. And I was their on-site account director for an agency that was based in Texas. My job became traveling around the world to all the toy fairs. And I immediately noticed that every other brand has demonstrators and spokespeople to show how the new Optimus Prime works or the new My Little Pony playset. The buyer already knows how it works, what's in the box, how much the box cost them, how many they could fit on the shelf at Tesco. And they've known that since August when we started pitching it to them. They've gotten videos about how it works. Like they already know all that stuff. What they're there for is to see and more importantly, feel, in my mind, what we're going to do to drive their business. The fact is, I have 400 games and they have 6 minutes. So obviously, I'm not going to focus on 400 games. The theme one year was joy of connection. So the way I handled it was I'm going to plant an idea in their head that they can't escape from. So the theme this year is joy of connection. I want you to imagine a family around the table playing a game, no cell phones in sight, and just big smiles. That's what the joy of connection looks like. I've just put a physical representation of our concept into that buyer's head. So then the next 5 minutes are dedicated to showing how it comes to life through our 5 game segments like kids, preschool, what have you. And the last 30 seconds is explain the benefits to his business of the joy of connection. Sales would go up 5% to 15% because I knew how the audience was thinking. That's my job, is to walk in an audience's shoes. That's what I've perfected over time. And that's what makes what I do important.
Yeah.
Because the biggest problem we have is thinking like a business when everyone else is thinking like a human. You processing this information, you process as a human. Wouldn't it be smart for a business to speak in human terms about their business and create that interest in it based on what the audience needs to hear? And any audience, the first thing they need to hear, the first 10 seconds, they need to connect with you and need to know more. So the importance of starting a presentation, a public speaking opportunity. Take TEDx, for example. Every TEDx or talk starts with a question or think about this statement. Now, what that's doing for the speaker and the audience is creating a connection. The speaker is thinking, okay, it's me versus them. It's my brain versus all of them. But the second they see the hands go up or oh, yeah, that's an interesting thing to think about, all of the sudden it makes this switch that feels, instead of me versus them, it's us. And how you turn a pitch into a conversation is inherent to how people remember you. If I come in and read my business card in a networking event, no one's going to remember me. If I'm a PR firm, you ask me what I do and I say, I own a PR firm. Well, that's a terrible way to start the conversation because I already know what PR firms do. Maybe I'd ask you what clients you have. But if you were to say, I make your news matter, now it's a different story. Two things are happening. The tell me more effect is there because you haven't said you're a PR firm. And more importantly, what you just focused on is not a solution. What you focused on was their motivation of why any business would need a PR firm. Their news can't fall on deaf ears. So they need to know more. That's the first thing that any public speaking scenario needs to think about, is forming that connection with their audience immediately. I'll give you an example of what happened to me. At the time, I was working on the Transformers brand at Hasbro, and this was the first time that I had to get up in front of the C-suite and the amphitheater style of country managers, other VPs. All of these people are in there, and I'm standing in front of them. And again, remember, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I looked out and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be sick. The first thing that came to mind was, show of hands, how many people were terrified the first time they had to present to this front horseshoe? Every hand, including the CEOs, went up. And that switch occurred. All of a sudden, I felt instantly comfortable because now the audience relates to me and I relate to them. Forms a connection immediately. I feel more comfortable going on with the rest of my conversation. So that's my goal. Form that connection, like joy of connection, right? Form that connection and then plant something in their mind. How you help that person and give them a solution in a sentence, and you're off and running.
The connection thing is a theme I think that comes up again and again in conversations I have with people on this show, particularly when you're in front of an audience. And one of the things I really loved about the story when you were at the event as well is that it kind of highlighted for me how I see a lot of people get stuck in doing what they've always done or doing what everyone else is doing, lacking the creativity and relying on the safety of the crowd or the feeling of safety of what you've always done, rather than look and see, oh, there's actually a theme to this event, and we actually don't have to do what everyone else is doing. In fact, maybe that's not the best thing to do. Like, people are very happy to have that sort of fast solution to their problem, but it's probably not actually really serving them, because what they're not doing, as you say, is connecting, being memorable, actually serving the audience that they're in front of. So I found that very useful, just in terms of, I see this a lot in the speaking circuit and on the comedy circuits, of people just doing what they usually do rather than taking the opportunity to understand how this audience is working, or what the theme of the event is that they should maybe be at least tying some of their stuff into, and being a bit more remembered and valuable because of that.
Absolutely, 100%. Here's an interesting story about exactly that. So, first of all, to put it in public speaking perspective, if you're just carrying on about a theme without setting it up, you've got a problem, because people don't have a baseline. They're just listening to you reading through something, right? This happened for the making of the movie Ghostbusters, where it was actually Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis who were selling it in. They couldn't get two studios to bite, the first two to bite, because they just jumped into the story. Okay, it begins with this, and there's no concept of what's coming. You don't set expectations. So they figured out they needed a line to set expectations. So in 6 words, they figured out how to describe the movie: ghost janitors or custodians of New York City. That is exactly what the movie is about. They wear coveralls. They come out carrying traps, exterminators. There is even a song on the soundtrack called Cleaning Up the Town. It all set them up for the rest of the story. And I think that's what we miss a lot when it comes to our opportunity to speak with an audience or to an audience, is not relating to them and thinking that what we think is important, what we have to say, is going to be important to them.
Yeah.
It's not, unless you think like a human being.
Which is very important advice to take to heart. And so I think for speakers, one of the situations that pretty much every professional speaker is going to find themselves in is a place where you are actually pitching for the business to get us to land yourself a speaking gig. And there's a lot of pitching advice out there. Some of it's okay, some of it's maybe good, some of it's not so good. So there's a lot of voices out there, and I think people maybe don't fully know how best to go about this. But what would be, based on some of the things you're saying, and maybe other areas of your expertise, what would be some of the things that you would encourage a speaker to focus on to be able to pitch themselves well for picking up business?
I think first and foremost is a point of difference. So I'm just going to, use like resumes as an example. All right. The importance of a point of difference right from the jump means that they're going to hold on to it. They're going to want to know more. And if they think that, then you've got them where you want them. Right. So if everybody's saying I'm a public speaker and I'm looking to get paid for it, then what we want to come at it with is, I can deliver value based on why you need it. That should be the story you're telling. So if that's the first thing you put in their head, my speaking, what I have to say will deliver value for you, that's an important idea to plant, because then you're going to explain why it's valuable. And remember, you haven't even said I'm a speaker looking to get paid. You are
Yeah.
focused on them and what they are looking for. So they're going to say, what kind of value is that? You're able to explain it, but you've set up the conversation as a value proposal and not as I'm a person who wants to get paid for what I say. Explain yourself as a dynamic of speaking and not a public speaker. Put it into the outcome of what you want it to be and lead with that. You know, those people need to walk away with some sort of information from you.
Yeah. A lot of people tend to lean into the "I help" statements. Is that a good one to use, or would that be a "don't do that"?
I call that story brand Mad Libs.
Right.
So the very first step in story brand, and people, the whole program's brilliant, but the first step is I help business A achieve goal B by solving problem C with solution D. It, it looks like a run-on sentence. And I see it under profiles on LinkedIn all the time. I help is a very common way to start your pitch. The two first words out of your mouth sound just like anybody else. So I agree with you there. I assist, I guide. Use those types of words. It sounds better than I help.
Yeah. Yeah. So you do need to, to some degree, be able to nutshell the actual benefit and transformation, whatever that we are offering up front, and even before we actually get to expressing that, create a little bit of intrigue around it. That all makes a lot of sense to me. So what about when we're actually in the conversation with somebody? I mean, we've said what we do. Where do we go from there?
I would jump into a comparative set and how you set yourself apart from them. So most public speakers are going to come here and tell you, I want to get paid to be a public speaker on your platform. That's not why I'm here. And set that up, right? You haven't even said why you're here yet. That could be whatever. But this is what you hear from everybody. I'm different. That's what you want to get across. So you talk to all these people who say they want to be public speakers and they want to get paid for it. And how they introduce themselves is, I'm a public speaker. Well, that doesn't add any value. That's sort of like an obvious reason for why. So that's lowest bar to cross, right? If you're able to get them thinking about you're different than them, they're going to want to know how. So it's a simple way to lead them into that tell me more effect. How are you different? Like it's not just the content, it's how you deliver it, right? So that's where you want yourself to stand out, not just as a public speaker.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think as well, one of the challenges that people tend to face in this is thinking that this is something you're supposed to be able to do on the spot. Like you can turn up to the call and improvise this. That actually is worth taking that bit of time up front to be able to do this well. Maybe even practice it with somebody so that you can run through saying the words in an actual conversation before you ever get onto the phone with a book or someone who might want you for an event. So it's
Actually,
really very yeah.
I'm sorry, just to piggyback on that, I would highly suggest running it by three people who know you well and ask them specifically, does this sound like me? That's the most important thing to pull out of it, because you need to come across as authentic when you're up there. You need to be the real deal. And if it doesn't sound like you, if it sounds just like any other public speaker in business looking for gigs, right? It's not authentic. People don't buy into it as much.
Yeah.
And that's what's important to impress on them is, I'm not a public speaker. I am a performative value provider, whatever you say. I provide a dynamic interaction with the audience that they won't forget. Something like that sets you apart from everybody else that they've talked to.
Yeah. I know that I often have this conversation these days about how the majority of people are even just putting this stuff into an AI tool and saying, create my pitch for me. And well, AI is scraping information from other people. So at some point, if you just if people keep putting this stuff into their pictures and profiles and everything like that, that's all it's going to be scraping is what it's scraped before and scraped again, and until it's like so homogenized
Yeah.
but it's already there's already a bit of that. Like you can kind of tell sometimes when something has almost definitely been written by AI, but it is that sense of, does this sound like natural words that a person would say?
Or the
And the,
cadence or how you
right.
deliver it. Yeah.
But to say actually run it by people who know you, who actually know how you speak and communicate is an even wiser tool, because they actually do know, is this in your normal sort of range of how you speak and how you communicate with people? And if it's not, then to make it more of a natural fit for you is actually very good advice. So I do particularly like that. I think there's so many pitfalls we can fall into this stuff, and this is one of those spaces where it's not a leave it to AI kind of case at
No,
all.
you know what? The best trick for people who are writing with AI, and again, I use it to organize thoughts and then I write because AI can't write like me, like I would. The easiest thing to do when you finish it is say, now explain it to a 14-year-old or a 13-year-old because it's going to dumb the language down. That's what you need.
Yeah.
I had to, for a client, figure out a way to explain what terpenes are in the cannabis business. And terpenes in the wine business, it's the same thing. Like, oh, I'm getting an oaky flavor. Well, you pick up on these things in the soil and where it's grown and that kind of stuff. And the terpenes are what give it its distinct flavor. So the terpene for lemon would show up in the plant. Explaining these scientific names for the terpenes is impossible when, to a bunch of people who are shopping at a cannabis dispensary. So what I asked it to do was explain it to a 12-year-old. And what it gave back was a comparison using ice cream. It was very simple, very straightforward, and
Yeah,
sounded a lot less AI, to be honest. But I don't think it's smart to write with AI and expect that to work based on what you said.
yeah,
Our ability to see it, and I'm not talking about software that sees it, our ability to see it. You pick up on M dashes all the time. They use all of the platforms, but especially GPT, use M dashes all the time.
yeah.
There's a cadence to how they do it. So if you and I are picking up on that now, this isn't some resume checking AI system, AI checking system. These are two people who actually see that it's written in AI. It becomes incredibly evident. So imagine how the audience is taking it. They're thinking the same way. Chances are they've used it in some capacity. So even they're
For sure.
seeing the output. So they've got insight into what you're writing already because they could recognize it.
Yeah. I
And
do
it's
think,
never in your authentic voice. That's the biggest problem. First thing to recognize is that all of those platforms are yes men until you build an app that puts guardrails on them, right? They're just going to say yes to everything. And if you keep telling it to change it, it's like, great idea. Yeah, do it this way, blah, blah, blah. Now you actually feel like you were the one writing it. And the truth is, you weren't. You were just listening to the yes man tell you yes to everything. And what you come out with, because you spent so much time telling it what to do, you are programmed to think that it's the right thing. It's just human nature, right? Well, that becomes a problem because it doesn't matter. AI is still going to write like AI. There are still M dashes in there. There are still, like, if you know someone and how they communicate, and then you have them, replicate it with AI, you're going to see that it's not the same thing. It's a visual standout, let alone content standout.
yeah.
I know a guy who built a program around AI, but he incorporated neuro linguistic analysis.
Hmm.
And what that meant was it was built to understand, like, give me all these LinkedIn posts, give me your emails, give me all of this. And it actually gets damn close. I'd say 90% of what your voice should be because it integrated so many guardrails and they're not able to just say, yes, that's you. Yes, that's you.
To me, it makes sense. But I think even using AI as a collaborator tool now is challenging because of those things. Because I do think there's plenty of people out there who are rallying against it and don't like it. And if they see an M dash or anything that looks vaguely AI, they're switching off. I don't care what a machine thinks, or something in them is just switching off. Even if it's actually your stuff and it's just been maybe polished up a little bit through an AI tool,
Yeah.
that still has the potential to happen.
If they pick up on it at all, it shifts their perception.
Right. So in we talked about some of the stuff in terms of the words we say and how we structure stuff with a pitch. Beyond the words, what else is important in terms of making a good pitch for actually being persuasive and maybe influential with that as well?
It actually has to do with order of information. So the order of your words are more important. It's like you need to read the book to them in the order of pages that they need. Okay. Not the way the business is thinking. All of us, when it's our business, we think in terms of solutions and services. That's what we want to spell out. But that's not the right order of pages. That's page 3 and page 5 that you're jumping to first. They need 1, 2, and 4. So understanding the order of the information that you need to deliver directs them through what you're talking about in the right way that they'll hold on to and that they'll understand and hold on to. If you think and act like a business, they're not going to hold on to it. Simple as that. Because it doesn't relate to them. The whole thing is about building a rapport, right? Getting the audience on your side or at least engaged with you, because an audience is on or off. They're binary. If they see it's AI, they switch to off. If something catches their attention, they switch to on.
So let's say we've got a good order, we've got some good words in the pitch, we put it all together very nicely. Are there things, in your opinion, that would undermine that good pitch?
The what ifs. We are prone to a little bit of, call it anticipatory dread before we have to get up on stage, right? Everybody's got it. And my way of looking at it is everyone gets the butterflies. You can't get rid of them. But how do you get them to fly in formation, right? And once you've made that your first job is to connect with that audience, that puts you at ease with everything else. So the what ifs are what you're asking yourself before you're out there. And it's things that get as deep as, what if they don't like my tie?
Right.
What if I stumble over my words? What if they don't like what I have to say? All of this stuff is blowing through our heads every time we have to present, pitch, public speaking opportunities, or there's a 0.1% chance that somebody's not going to like your tie, or that they're going to be all over you because you missed a word, because they've missed words. It's empathy that's happening. It's not, oh my God, I feel like an idiot. Just like when I asked everybody in the room about presenting to the C-suite, right? It immediately gets them on your side. And the what ifs, start asking questions that will happen. What if they are interested in what I have to say? What if they are looking at me because, I've made this connection? They're not looking at their phone. They're not looking at their computer. What if they follow my story along perfectly because I set it up for them to read the book in the right order of pages? All those things have a much higher likelihood of happening. And we never ask ourselves those questions because we're so good at being self-critical and terrible about self-embellishing.
Yeah. We tend to
It's just
catastrophize as
human
well, right?
nature.
Yeah. We always
Catastrophizes.
imagine,
Yes.
we always
In fact,
imagine,
that's the word I use, John, when
yeah.
I'm talking to people about this. When you get to the what if they don't like my tie, that's a good sign that you're catastrophizing.
Right, you're focusing on all the things that could go wrong rather than what could go right. And that's really just, as you say, it was more about our personal insecurity than anything else. But it is also about just imagining worst case scenarios, which our brains like to do. And, they're going to do it. But as you rightly say, the vast majority of situations that just never happens. The vast majority of people are actually pretty nice, pretty friendly, polite at least, and aren't going to get on your case about stuff. Who knows what they say in private, but as they always say, someone's opinion about you is none of your business, unless they choose to share it with you, right? So my take on a lot of this is, much as the same in the speaking world. What's really persuasive isn't always the actual words or the logic, although those play a part. It's the emotion side of it that really is the most persuasive element of it. And you say the connection side of it, that demonstration of value, the service to them, the curiosity creating.
That
Um,
is the part that makes the difference.
Right. Yeah. Understandably so. We're all curious. Is that what they call it? The Zeigarnik effect of that thing? We don't like having these sort of mental tabs open. We have this need for closure. We need an answer. So if something hasn't been answered, we want to get that answer. Let me ask you. Last time you came on the show, I'm pretty sure I remember we talked somewhat about elevator pitches. And I hear different people saying different things about elevator pitches, and some people say you need that, you don't. Where do we stand with the old elevator pitches these days? Is it still something important? It's something that we should keep in our back pocket, and if so, why?
Well, first, the origin of this whole thing, it's created by BNI is a huge networking system, and everyone is taught to have a 30-second commercial. That's your elevator pitch, right? The commercials are terrible. I've sat in these things and they're just not very good, but the people are performative. Some of them are memorable. Great. The elevator pitch is a concept that the word pitch probably shouldn't be in there, because what you're trying to create is an elevator conversation, right? They're not there just to listen to you talk about your business. They're there for you to answer questions that they have. And their first question is, what do you do? Right? So the true way to look at an elevator pitch is how you turn it into a conversation. And it may feel one way, but you're predicting the questions they ask. So I build these pitches based on a very low hanging fruit visual of an 8th floor elevator. And each floor of the elevator has what you need to convey, and in the right order. Okay. But the difference is, on my elevator, the person walks on but doesn't push a button, the door's still open. And they say, what do you do? If you don't get them to say, tell me more, they get off the elevator. That's how it works,
Yeah.
because they are not going to be listening to what comes next. Use the PR firm as an example. I'm a PR firm. Oh, great. Off the elevator. But if they say, I make your news matter, they need to know more, they hit a button. After that, their questions are, what do you do? Tell me more. Got it. Next thing they're going to be curious about is who you help and what they're going through, right? The challenge. Well, so many people have to deal with this. They try to write their own news. They get writer's block. They can't find the words. Okay, well, how do you help them? I find the words they can't and add the impact their news needs. Huh. How do you do that? Now this becomes a 3-step process, and not your services. This is floor 4 of the elevator. Services is floor 5, but I'm already organizing it for them by saying you need a process, steps 1, 2, and 3 of what they would experience working end to end, right? So in a PR firm example, we discover the news you have to tell, design the right way to tell it, deploy it, and measure results. Now compare that to, I'll use an analogy. You bring your car into the mechanic, the garage, because something's wrong. He doesn't say, hey, John, come on in. I'm going to show you all the tools I have to fix your car. He says, I'll put it on the lift, find out what's wrong, let you know what it'll take to get it fixed. We'll get you back on the road as fast as possible, as quickly as possible. Beginning to end, what's going to happen to them. So it behooves you to have an easy, high-level way to explain what you do before you get into services. But here's the trick, and why that process is so effective. You are couching your services, what you're going to do or can do, under each of those 3 steps. So it's digested more as a 3-course meal and not just a menu of food. Makes a big difference.
It
Then they're going
does.
to want to know, what's in it for me? Sounds
Yeah.
good. What's in it for me, though? What's the benefit? That's what they can do now that they couldn't before. There's a benefit that relates to what they can do now, not what you just delivered for them. It's not a benefit to their business in a direct way. It's what it puts into motion. Then they're going to want to know, can you prove it works? That's validation. It comes in three forms. Social proof. That's going to be testimonials, comments, followers, that kind of stuff. People who anecdotally refer to you. That's social proof. Scientific proof is a case study. Problem, solution, effect, measurement. That's what that represents. And the last piece, and this is always overlooked as part of your validation, is your about me section. And 90% of the ones I read bury the lead on what they should be saying up front, but they focus on themselves and what they've done. The audience doesn't care about that necessarily. What they care about is how you ended up in this place to get it done and if you're qualified to do it. So when I was working at X, I realized that A, B, and C was happening and it was having an effect on X, Y, Z. So I created the solution, which is the business. And I've been doing this for 10 years. Then your experience or the credentials to back up what you just said you could do. That's the right order. It just is. Think about it from a human standpoint. How did you get here is the about me section, not what have you done.
I think I see a lot of people doing it very wrong on a regular basis because I get pitched for people who want to be on the podcast all the time, and sometimes I give a full response to them, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm just like, I don't know, please remove me from your list kind of thing. But it depends on the mood they catch me in on some days as well. But I would say probably around 98-99% of those pitches are pretty terrible. And again, they follow a sort of template that everyone seems to use, and it's always about me. I do this, I do that, I've done this, I've done that. This is why I'd make a great guest on your show. And it's like, much like you're saying, I don't so much care about that. What I care about is the problem I need solving is I want excellent guests. I want excellent topics for my audience that are going to be relevant to them and interesting for them to want to tune into, that actually help them solve some of the challenges that they have with their lives as a speaking business owner, whether that's on the stage or off the stage. So I want to be able to explore those. And that's what people don't seem to get, is like they claim to listen to my shows and they obviously don't. They take clips from the transcripts or whatever else and pump it into AI. So pump it and give me a nice letter. One yesterday couldn't even decide if it was first person or third person when the person was writing to me. It was very weird. But people get this stuff very, very wrong. And I don't think it's really that hard. And also you're saying is like, if somebody came to me and there's actually they give me a bit of curiosity into saying maybe a bit about what they do or how they do it, and they're very clear on what they can do for my audience and what a great episode would look like for us, it makes it much easier for me to potentially say yes to that, or at least say, hey, look, it's a no, but great pitch, which I would as well, because I see so few of them.
Yeah. And I think they're setting themselves up for failure because they're thinking about them and not the audience.
Yeah.
What is I keep using the word value, but use whatever word you want. What is the substance that you are delivering to the audience and why is it important? That's the questions that they should be answering when they talk to you.
Yeah.
And if they start out just saying, I've done this, like if I came to you and said, I've presented to audiences of 10,000 people, I don't care.
Okay.
I want to know what the substance was, what the reaction was, if people left good reviews on the experience. That's what I'm interested in if I'm you.
Yeah.
Not what you've done.
Right, exactly. And I don't think I don't think it's that hard to get. But again, this is like people keep copying what they've seen everyone else doing or what AI tools are telling them to do. And AI tools are telling them to do what everyone else is doing because that's what they mostly see and scrape as well from their information. And it's not super helpful. So I think it's very, very good advice, and people need to be a bit less me focused about how fantastic they are and more focused on, well, what can you actually do? What's the and my only pushback on the word value before was just like not to actually use that word when you're describing what you do for people.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I agree
yeah,
with you. It's just like I help. Change it up.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's all really valuable stuff, and I think you've really, I think, laid out very well clear frameworks and ideas for being able to differentiate yourself and step outside from what everyone else is doing and be noticed more for it as well. So I really, really appreciate all that. I know you have some stuff that you're working on at the moment. Can you tell us a bit about what that is?
Yes. So for 18 months, I decided I was going to take a hiatus and do something that it's punch in, punch out. And something I loved in my 20s was bartending. I was good at it because I could, anybody could pour drinks, but how you build a rapport with who's ordering it increases tips. Pretty straightforward, right? The bare minimum is, can I take your order? So I went back to that. And the big difference was in my 50s, these places closed at 10 p.m. When I was in my 20s, I worked in Manhattan. My shift started at 10 p.m. and I was there until 5 a.m. So, but it gave me a chance to step away from everything. And I was just talking about, 100% of your business, you never have an outside perspective. Well, it turns out when you step away from your business for a year or two, it's almost like you put down a crossword puzzle because you can't figure out that word. You go have dinner, you come back, you pick it up, and the word is like, oh, yeah, I got that. That's what it felt like. So, what I thought about was two things. One, I have other lines of revenue, let's say, like retainer clients, that kind of thing. I teach a corporate workshop to agencies, marketing firms, companies that have to present their ideas and sell them all the time, right? But 80% of the people that I communicate with day in, day out are just like you and me. They network, they're on LinkedIn, they run podcasts. That's what we do because we're not buying a commercial during the World Cup anytime soon.
Yeah.
So we rely on human engagement and content to find what we're looking for. Well, what I had was a singular offer with a sliding scale payment based on the size of the business. And moreover, it was a one-off. Like there's no reason for them to come back to me. So what I did was think about from a one-off perspective. I don't want a one-off that's 3 weeks long. So I planned out two products. I could do the whole thing. Like if they're coming from zero, I could get them the tactical marketing plan. But what I noticed was that's a tough pill to swallow. $3,000 for 3 weeks to build your message. But I can do it in less than an hour. So I built a pitch power hour, whatever the hell you want to call it. And it's $500 US, which makes it very affordable. It delivers what they need with immediacy, which is needed. And they review it with me. So they're getting the feedback that they got on the right track. So all of those things work for a great product and not a service. The second thing I wanted to address was the service side. To complement the one-off, I want to create revenue through a different channel. So I created what I call the pitch lab. And the truth is, no matter what kind of communication it is, it's hard for us to do when we're talking about us and our business. And that could be an email. It could be a LinkedIn post. It could be in a networking event when you have a minute to pitch what you do. All of those are times where you have to be able to communicate and talk about your business the right way to stand out as, this has always been my key point. You got to be first, best, or different to stand out. Those are your three choices. First and best, hell if I could come by those. But different we can all do.
Yeah.
And it just takes that understanding of seeing the outside world for your customers, your audience for the human beings that they are, and learn how to translate from business to human, which is insane seeing that you're playing a role in business and you can't think like a human.
Hmm.
It blows my mind. We would
And yet
rely
we
on
do.
all this. We would rely on all this research from like the global insights team, and they did quantitative and qualitative and focus groups and blah, 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 blah. And they come back with all of these insights, and none of them are right. You know, they're all scientific. They're all like, this is the data report and blah, blah, blah. Well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever filled out a quantitative survey? Because there's always a reward at the end. Do this and we'll give you a $25 gift card. Do you
Yeah.
think you're putting much thought into the questions you're asking? Or are you just doing C, C,
Trying to
C
get through
all the way
them. Yeah, yeah,
down
yeah.
to get a $20 gift card? Qualitative, what if you catch me on a bad day? Focus groups, geographically stifling. None of that's going to get you what you need. However, if you think more anecdotally, testimonial wise, like think more like a human being, what you'll start to see is because they think differently than you, it's going to be impossible for you to get through to them unless you can translate what you do into their language. That's the bottom line. And that actually is what creates the most engagement and stickiness throughout an entire, let's say it's a half hour. It stays sticky for them. You know, they hold on to it simply because it's being explained in human language and not business language. You know, here's an awesome example of this. I don't know if we're up against time, but you'll appreciate this. We, Monopoly, the game of Monopoly, everyone around the world, 96% brand awareness, but they buy it for $10, keep it for 20 years, and replace the thimble with a real thimble. It's not a luxury frequency purchase. It's not a luxury purchase. It's a 10 to 15 to $20 purchase. That's it, one time. So everybody already has Monopoly. So how do we get them excited about a new version of Monopoly? And Global Insights came back with 5 or 6 different insights that we could develop off of. And it was like, thanks. Like, which one do we choose to work off of? There should be one insight that drives everything. So someone on the team, brand manager, someone junior, found a BuzzFeed poll that said 50% of people cheat when they play Monopoly. Exactly half of the people who play.
Yeah.
So we get out Kate, this woman, Kate, was the director of the brand. She gets in front of that same scenario, the horseshoe, the amphitheater, right? She puts up just a screen grab of that. This says that 50% of people cheat when they play Monopoly. For 5 minutes, everyone in the room started talking about cheating or catching people. It was a 50-50 conversation, I swear. The next slide introduced Cheaters Edition Monopoly, where if you get, there are cheats laid out on the board as cards. If you get away with it, you get money. If you get caught, you go directly to jail, and we added an actual handcuff to it. Sold, and then the next slide was how we'll market it. 3 slides. That was it. Sold 500,000 units.
Yeah, not surprised. Wow.
It was a brilliant example of public speaking, presenting, communicating to an audience, getting them hooked on an idea. All of that happened. And it was based on landing on one insight that created that conversation. And then the solution was evident on the next slide. 2 slides to sell a product is pretty insane.
That's pretty good. I love that story as well, and you're quite right that I would like that. Mike, for any of our listeners who might like to get in touch with you, what's going to be the best way for them to do that?
I always put my contact info in LinkedIn, which is the quickest way to get in touch with me. I do have a website, but it's a landing page for my new program that I've launched called the Pitch Lab. And again, it's for any kind of communication. You need to know how to communicate on their level. So I created a monthly membership, like building a community. The Pitch Lab is 2 lab sessions a month, which is an hour, hour and a half, deep dive into whatever your challenge is. And we work on it together. It's not just me preaching. So it's like a mastermind, right? From there, you know, I've got some pretty effective resources to share, but office hours, the lab report is the newsletter. All of these tools are based on how to get you to think like a human when you're writing for business or presenting for business. And so that's what I've decided. That was the other aspect for that recurring revenue is the pitch lab. That's the concept. So that's where I'm driving people. And that's, I could put it in the chat if it's easier for you,
And look,
or
yeah,
send it after.
send that over to me. I'll make sure
Yeah.
that those links are in the show notes for our listeners, so they
Okay,
can
good.
go and check you out, and
Yeah.
maybe even send you a message on LinkedIn.
Nice. Yeah.
Right,
I priced the first 30 members as founding members at $99 a month. So it's
boom.
affordable. It makes sense. After that, the price will go up, but having 30 people in the communities, that is a gold standard for a lot of people. So if I
Sounds
could
very
get to there, I'm
doable.
perfectly happy.
Great stuff. Mike, thanks for everything you shared today. It's been wonderful to have you back as a guest on the show. And who knows, maybe 5 or 6 years time we'll have you back again, or maybe sooner this time. But
What's
Mike, it's
funny is
been
I remember our first conversation, pieces of it, and I'm thinking about how different I sound versus that time, like how I've evolved over those 5 years.
yeah. Look, I'm going to put a link to to that episode into the show notes as well for anyone who wants to go back and maybe compare for
Compare.
themselves. Yeah. See some of the stuff we talked about way back when. Well, Mike's not the only returning guest. I also have a lady called Simone Saltner who is coming back to share more of her PR wisdom with us. Returning again after quite a few years of not having spoken to them on the show. It's been great to hear what some past guests have to say now, where they've developed, because a lot's changed in the last 5 or 6 years. Now, next week, I'm going to be doing part 2 on the keynote series that I started last time. So if you haven't checked out part 1 yet, we're talking about the right way to use AI in creating your keynotes and the wrong way, the things not to do with that. We're going to go a bit deeper into keynote creation in next week's episode. And then after that, one that I promise you do not want to miss is going to be my episode with Susanna Ray. And Susanna has a book out called Framework Thinking. And if you have ever wanted to be able to create pictures and diagrams that illustrate your thinking and help to quantify your intellectual property and stay with people much longer than the words you say to them, that is going to be an episode that you must watch or listen to. Make sure you're following the show so that you get that episode. If you haven't already done so, if you are in a position of looking to become more booked and better paid as a speaker, and you haven't already checked out the Known Booked and Paid Blueprint, go to presentinfluence.com/KBPB or follow the link in the show notes, and you can find out all about the founding program and if it could be a right fit for you. Wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, have an amazing week. Go and do something worth talking about. See you next time.